Okay, so we're moving on. I believe we're making progress. So the last few sessions we've been looking at what is a learning outcome, how do you write a learning outcome. We've also looked at designing a lesson plan. What would a lesson plan look like? What are the different components of a lesson plan? For today, we want to look at facilitating effective learning, and we'll be moving forward to talk about instructional strategies. This will be putting in flesh into the lesson plan that you have developed. So as we think of facilitating effective learning, we'll be looking at some principles for an effective learning. Sometimes the most brilliant and intelligent minds do not shine in the standardized tests because they do not have standardized minds. Not every one of us, it's related with lesson learning styles that we talked about. Not everyone has the same inclination. So people learn in different ways. So principles that we'll be looking at. The first principle we'll be looking at is understand and practice what you are teaching. Okay, this is obvious, but then this is where we mostly lack as well. So understand what you're teaching, not just understand it, but may let it be something that you demonstrated. Your students, may they see what it is. How do we become really, really good? How can we practice something and become good in it? You can ask yourself, and we've done this one when we talked about how do we learn. How do you become really good in something? What does it take to become really good in something? Some ideas there. So 5 keys to becoming a world-class master of almost anything. The idea is how do we really become good? So 3 F's and IT. So the first F is focus. Focus. Know what you want to practice. Narrow your focus. Don't be a person who's touching here and everywhere, because when you do that, you will be a busybody, but not really mastering anything specifically. So sometimes our tendency is we're invited to do this, so you go there, you go that, you go here, you touch this, you touch that one. So you may be touching everything else, but you may not necessarily be good at something specific. So decide on what is it that I want to master. Frequency, this is practice often, spacing for learning. So doing it repeatedly as you practice it. Obviously, as you do it more, you become better at it. But also giving it space. You do something and then give it time and then do it again. That way our mind and our skills have a tendency to develop that way. Feedback, practice correctly. Ask for assessment so that you will not be practicing the wrong thing. You know, it's possible for you to repeatedly do something, but do it in such a wrong way, that you become good at it, but you become good at doing the wrong thing. So get feedback from people, from friends. Ask for assessment. Excuse me. Intensity. Practice with passion. Get emotional about it. So when your emotion gets involved in it, you become good at it. If you don't like it, you may not necessarily be good at it. So try to draw your attention, your emotions towards the thing that you're doing. See the relevance, see the importance. Remind yourself how relevant and important whatever that thing you practice is. Time, obviously, you have to give time for it. Practice over many years. Take a long view at it. So these are some of the things that would help us to become good at it. As teachers, how do we become good at it? The things that we talked about. What are the areas in my teaching skills that I want to develop? Select that and try to work at it repeatedly. Ask people to give you feedback on it. Get your passion towards it. What would be the value of you becoming good at that specific way of teaching, at the thing that you want to develop? Okay, the second one is believe in the people whose learning we are facilitating. Expect the best. Okay, this has to do with expectation. Believe in the people whose learning we are facilitating. Believe in them. Believe that they can achieve what you want them to be learning. Having a right expectation, a right attitude towards our students matters to the way we teach and also to the way they learn. And I would like to talk to us about the law of expectation. So expectations exist in everyone about everything all the time. We all always have an expectation. As you're watching this video, you have an expectation. And as I am preparing this one, I have an expectation. We all have expectations. Now, as you can see, this lady here, this guy, he is an amazing guy here, amazing guy, and amazing force. All right, and we have this woman who is just blown by this man, by this guy, and so she has an expectation of this guy, and then suddenly we see taking everything off. And you can see what happens to the lady. So when everything is gone off, we have something very different. When she saw him initially, she was thinking this is a muscular young man kind of thing with a strong horse there. But then when all the things are taken off, this is what it is. So sometimes our expectations and the reality may not necessarily be, may not align. So expectations impact ourselves and others. The Pygmalion effect, there is this idea. This is a guy who, they say he was tired. He was extremely disappointed with women, and so he decides to create his own beautiful woman. So he makes this statue of his woman. When he finishes, he just loves this beautiful woman. He is in love with her. He loves her so much. At some point, his goddess brings her to life. Okay, and because of his expectation of this woman and his love for her, at some point she turned into a beautiful human living woman, and they lived ever after. Is the story. Now, we'll just go to the idea of expectations. So our expectations, when we are expecting high, we will be able to get it, is the idea they're trying to say. We're trying to see from that one. But then thinking about our belief about our students. Teachers' beliefs about his or her students. So you have a certain belief. So when you're teaching your students, you have a certain attitude, a certain expectation of your students. Now your expectation will determine teacher's actions towards his or her students. It will determine your action and your attitudes toward your students. If you feel like your students are brilliant, they are top-notch academicians. Now what that means is your action towards those students, your preparation for the students will be different. You will be preparing significantly. You will come to the classroom ready. You know your content. You're ready for all the possible questions your students may be asking you. So you come to the class very well prepared. Why? Because of your expectation. Your expectation is the students are brilliant. But what if you expect the students are, my students, they don't care. They don't even want to be in that classroom. If that is your expectation of the students, then you don't come to class prepared. So your action is determined by your expectation. Now, and your action will also determine the students' beliefs about their own capabilities. So if you believe your students are not good, not very good academicians, if you believe your students don't care about your class, and if you come into the classroom and if you treat them as if they won't understand, and you're not prepared and they don't understand, and that will determine the way they will behave, their capabilities. So they'll be thinking, okay, I don't get it. I won't understand anything anyways, okay? But if you think of them as students who can achieve, who can do well, and you come to class prepared, believing that they can do well, then you come to class and you relate with them, the students will begin to believe that they can do it. So your expectation will determine your preparation, and your preparation and your expectation of the students and the way you do things will determine the way the students will perform. Now, that obviously moves to the students' actions in school and life. Because of the belief that they have of their capabilities, they will put their best into it. They will study, they will work hard, they will start to produce things. So their action is going to be determined by your belief of them, your expectation. And obviously, finally, it goes towards the outcomes. So the outcomes, their performance, what they actually are able to produce at the end will be determined by your expectations. So our expectations in teaching of our students, it determines our outcomes. Our expectation determines our actions, and that determines the students' capabilities, their beliefs of themselves, their work, and it determines their outcome. So what is it? In your Sunday school class, in your youth ministry, wherever you're teaching, you have to ask yourself, do I have the right expectations? Do I have the right attitudes towards my students? Because that determines the whole process. Excuse me. Now, when we talk about the expectations, this is something we need to be careful. So we have the reality here. This is the reality of what the students are capable of doing. And this is our expectations of the students. Now, we want to be careful that our expectations, the gap, is not so big. Because when it is so different, when the expectation is so high, higher than the reality, it could result in disappointment. It could even cause discouragement or even despair. So you want to make sure that your expectation of the students is close to the reality of what they are and what they are capable of. A 2-year-old child, if you expect of that child what an 8-year-old child can do, then that child will definitely despair, will not be able to do, will be disappointed, discouraged, and despair. Okay, both he who expects great things of others and he who expects little will receive whatever he expects. So you will get what you're expecting. If you come into this class or if you go into any other class and your expectation is high, you will get high. If your expectation is low, then you will get low. That's the case with your students. If your expectation is high as a teacher, you will perform well. If your expectation is low, you will perform less. So whatever you get back is proportional to your expectation. So expect the best. The teacher should influence students' learning by adjusting expectations. Now, the third principle is build a safe environment that encourages learning. What makes you feel unsafe in a classroom will be something to think about. What is it that makes you unsafe in a classroom? If we were in a physical classroom together, what could make you unsafe? What are the possible factors that make students unsafe? So this would be something to think of. Now, especially with adult learners, if I point my hands and say, okay, Barcode, and I ask Barcode a question on the spot, and if I get into that habit where I call names, Sami, Nabiyu, and Stefanos, and if I keep doing that, then when you come into the classroom, you feel unsafe because you feel like you will get called on and you may be caught unprepared and you don't want to be in that position. So finding out what is it that makes students unsafe and making sure that the students feel safe in a classroom is important. Okay, I would like to move to the fourth one. Focus on the fact that learning is about helping people grow and change. Okay, this is a mindset. Learning, what is it? It's about seeing that people grow and seeing people change. So we have this growing there. You take care of it, prune it until it grows. That's the same idea. When we are teaching, in the process of learning, what we want to see is growth and change. So when you are in a classroom, the reason you are in a classroom is for the purpose of seeing change, and growth. So the purpose of learning is not to provide people with more information, because there is so much more information out there, much more than you can give. But it is to enable growth, and it is to enable change and growth to happen in a classroom setting. So information also needs to be transformed into knowledge, which leads into holiness, which leads into transformation. It should not, so the idea is it should not be just information that is given, but it should be something that causes transformation and causes some growth and change. Going to the fifth principle, establish clear learning outcomes, which encourages behavioral change and growth. Okay, going back to what we said about learning outcomes. So as we facilitate, if we are facilitating learning, if we are facilitating a classroom session in such a way learning is happening, then I need to have a clear outcome, a clear goal, and see how do I want my students to change? What kind of behavior do I want to see in my students? So focus on what the students need to learn and not on what you want to teach. Okay, so our goals, our outcomes, it has to do with the student. So when we think of learning objectives, I need you to remember this. When you think of learning objectives or learning outcomes, the focus of our learning objectives is what is happening in the students. It's not about me. It's not about, I'm going to teach this. No, it's about my students are going to learn this. My students are going to be able to do this. So learning outcomes has to do with the students. Even when they are written in terms of the students. By the end of the class, the students will do this, will learn that. So it has to do with the students and not about you. Even when you design it, it's not about what you want to teach, but it is about what you want, what the students want to learn. Learning outcomes are stated in terms of student learning and not the teacher teaching. Set clear outcomes for every lesson. Design lesson to achieve the stated learning outcomes. So once you have stated your learning outcome, then you design the whole thing, your lesson, in such a way it helps you to achieve the stated learning outcomes. So point is this. Determine what the students need to learn. And you state the objectives in terms of what the students are to learn. And you design the whole lesson in light of the objective or the learning outcomes that you have stated. Finally, build an active process of discovery learning that enables the learners to achieve the learning outcomes. This has to do with discovery learning, meaning engaging the students, not just passively sitting and listening to you, but it has to be designed in such a way the students are actively engaged in the learning process, because we learn as we are engaged in the learning process. Okay? So engage in active discovery learning. Discovery learning is an approach that allows students to be in control of their learning through hands-on exploration and inquiry without an emphasis on memorizing and repeating concepts, but to learn through unique experiences. Help students actively explore the subject. Students apply much more when they discover things for themselves. So the idea is get the students involved, get the students engaged in the learning process. Do not just be giving information. It doesn't mean it is wrong to give information. They need the information. But then as you give the information, allow them also to process it, to critically think of it, to engage with it, to relate it with their culture, to relate it to their context. Even question it if need be. Question it. And let them come to a good evidence for believing it. So get them to be involved in the learning process actively and creatively. Okay? So these are the 6 principles in facilitating learning, in allowing the students to learn. And I would ask you to just go back and review it as well. So a quick quick discussion questions for you to just think about. Think about the principles of facilitation we have just discussed. Answer the following 2 questions. Which principles from the list above are easy for teachers to follow, and which principles are difficult to follow, and why? So of the 6 that we looked at, which one is easy, which one is difficult, which one is hard for you, which one is easy for you, and explain why is it. So it's just for you to reflect. By that way, you'll review the 6 principles we talked about. Now, I would like to share for you a story of a kid called Teddy Stollard. And it's an amazing story. Every time I read it, it just brings tears to my eyes, but it shows the power that you have as a teacher. Here it is. Teddy Stollard story. Teddy Stollard certainly qualified as one of the least disinterested in school, musty, wrinkled clothes. Hair never combed, one of those kids in school with deadpan face, expressionless, sort of a glassy, unfocused stare. When Miss Thompson spoke to Teddy, he always answered in a mushy monosyllables. Unattractive, unmotivated, and distant. He was just plain hard to like. Even though his teacher said she loved all in her class the same, down inside, she wasn't being completely truthful. Whenever she marked Teddy's papers, she got a certain perverse pleasure out of putting X's next to the wrong answers. And when she put the F's on top of the papers, she always did it with kind of a flair. She should have known better, though. She had Teddy's records, and she knew more about him than she wanted to admit. The records of Teddy's, they read this. They read, first grade, Teddy shows promise with his work and attitude, but poor home situation. In second grade, the comment was saying this. Teddy could do better. Mother is seriously ill. He receives little help at home. In third grade, the comment said, Teddy is a good boy, but too serious. He is a slow learner. His mother died this year. Fourth grade, Teddy is very slow, but very well behaved. His father shows no interest in him. Christmas came, and the boys and the girls in Miss Thompson's class, they brought her Christmas presents. They piled their presents on her desk, and they crowded around to watch her open them. Among the presents, there was one from Teddy Stollard. She was surprised that he had brought her a gift, but he had. Teddy's gift was wrapped in a brown paper and was held together with Scotch tape. On the paper were written the simple words, for Miss Thompson from Teddy. When she opened Teddy's present, out fell a gaudy rhinestone bracelet with half the stones missing and a bottle of cheap perfume. The other boys and girls, they began to giggle and smirk over Teddy's gifts, but Miss Thompson, at least she had enough sense to silence them immediately, putting on the bracelet and putting some of the perfume on her wrist. Holding her wrist up for the other children to smell, she said, "Doesn't it smell lovely?" And the children, taking their cue from the teacher, they readily agreed with ooh and ah. At the end of the day, when school was over and the other children had left, Teddy lingered behind, and he slowly came over to her desk and said softly, Miss Thompson, you smell just like my mother, and her bracelet looks really pretty on you, too. I'm glad you liked my presents." When Teddy left, Miss Thompson got down on her knees and she asked God to forgive her. The next day, when the children came to school, they were welcomed by a new teacher. Miss Thompson had become a different person. She was no longer just a teacher. She had become an agent of God. She was now a person committed to loving her children and doing things for them that would live on after her. She helped all the children, but especially the slow ones, and especially Teddy Stollard. By the end of that school year, Teddy showed dramatic improvement. He had caught up with most of the students, and he was even ahead of some. She didn't hear from Teddy for a long time. Then one day she received a note that read, "Dear Miss Thompson, I wanted you to be the first one to know I will be graduating second in my class. Love, Teddy Stollard." 4 years later, another note came. "Dear Miss Thompson, they just told me I will be graduating first in my class. I wanted you to be the first to know. The university has not been easy, but I liked it. Love, Teddy Stollard." And 4 years later, dear Miss Thompson, as of today, I am Theodore Stollard, MD. How about that? I wanted you to be the first one to know. I'm getting married next month, the 27th to be exact. I want you to come and sit where my mother would sit if she were alive. You are the only family I have now. Dad died last year. Love, Teddy Stollard. Miss Thompson went to that wedding, and she sat where Teddy Stollard's mother would have sat. She deserved to sit there. She had done something for Teddy that he could never forget. What can you give as a gift? And instead of giving only something you buy, risk giving something that will live on after you. Be really generous. Give yourself to people like Teddy Stollard, one of the list, whom you can help to become one of the greats. So this is a beautiful, powerful story. May we be people, not just people who pour out information, but may we be people that God can use to transform lives. Bless you.